Let's talk about some of the challenges that you'll face when using semantic version packaging with package deployment pipelines. As we talked about, version numbers are very important to serve as a common language between the business and development. You can use version numbers to identify which changes and which types of changes new versions should have. But this can get pretty challenging to do once you have a package deployment pipeline. Let's keep in mind that packages are read-only by design. This ensures the exact same code is tested and bundled uniformly. If you notice a problem in testing, for example, you can't edit a code file inside the package and then redeploy that package. You have to create a new package and reject the old one as a whole. Another problem is that packages are uniquely identified by a name and a version number, and you can't reuse those to mean two different things. Accounts Web 1.5.0 needs to mean the same set of files all the time. Otherwise, you're completely defeating the purpose of having a simple package that is uniquely labeled. Version numbers also serve as this common language for the business, so it's not like we can just create a new version every time. If that third version number is used to represent patch changes, for example, it creates a problem when the business specifies the changes that they want in, let's say, Accounts Web 1.5.4. So what exactly can we do when we want to deploy a specific package? How can we create a suitable package for deployment? For example, if we create Accounts API 3.2.4, but then realize it has a bug in testing, we have to throw it out and start over. But we can't use 3.2.4 again, and we don't want to use 3.2.5 because that's exactly what the business is using to dictate changes. What's great is that we have a feature in semantic versioning called pre-release versioning that can help us out quite a bit here. Basically, the idea is that you can tag a pre-release by just putting a dash and then a pre-release identifier on it. For example, consider this release number, 3.2.4-RC.1. What this indicates is that this is actually a pre-release version of 3.2.4. Version 3.2.4, this package is considered the stable version of a software. What's great is you can create as many pre-release packages as needed, and this allows you to use any number of packages to get a final stable version and test those pre-release packages before saying, okay, this is the package that we want to release. But if we think about that a little bit further, these pre-release packages can have a little bit of a problem in our pipelines. First off, you can't deploy a pre-release package to production. By definition, a pre-release package is for testing purposes only. It's not something that's intended to be released as a package. We can't exactly change the version number of a package. Remember that pre-release tag is the version number. So you can't change the version number without editing the package because that's part of the package metadata. You can't exactly create a new package either, because every time you create a new package, it introduces new risks. For example, even if you use the exact same build server to build the exact same code, the output could be different. Maybe the dependency resolution changed, maybe the way the build server is configured changed, etc. Any number of things can change, and the bottom line is you cannot deploy an untested package to production. This is where the concept of repackaging comes in. With repackaging, you can use the same verified contents, but with a different packaging on the outside. Let me walk you through what the logical process of repackaging looks like. First, extract the contents of the package, for example, this pre-release package. Update the version metadata in that metadata file by basically just removing the RC tag. Next, pen some sort of note to the metadata to say, I repackaged this and this is why, this is when, this is a reference to the original package, and then publish this package back to the repository. What this does is this makes sure that if all you're doing is editing the metadata and you have a chain of auditing, you can be sure that none of the contents of the packaging just changed. Basically, only the label on the outside changed, and this certification with the repackaging note allows you to verify that. What that means is that this should only be done by a trusted and secure process. If you let a developer do it on a developer workstation, the developer could inject inadvertently, by mistake, or who knows, unintended changes in the package contents. If we think about this from a facility standpoint, this repackaging needs to be done in a clean room to make sure that the package contents are never tampered. Let's walk through how we can do this inside of Hedgehog. As I mentioned, in this instance of Hedgehog, we have two different pipelines that I created. The second pipeline is called Deploy with Repackaging, and this uses that repackaging concept. Let's take a look at the stages real quick. So you'll see that at first it starts with the same thing. Deploy the specified package to the integration environment using same exact deployment plan and accounts web. But the next step is kind of interesting. When we promote and deploy to this stage, what will happen is it will run this repackaging plan, but it's going to inject a variable called repackage target RC. Let's keep that in mind because when we look at the plan later, it'll show how it's used. After we're repackaging to RC, this release candidate package is then deployed to our testing environment. Before a package can enter this environment, though, we have a bit of a restriction on there. I can zoom in on this and show you what it says. Basically, it's looping through all of the packages that we're deploying and basically making sure that it is a RC package. If not, it's going to error out and not allow us to deploy this package to the testing environment. This is basically a safety measure to make sure that the package that only release candidates are deployed at this stage as expected. We're repackaging it once again and basically removing that tagline. And again, I'll show you how this repackaging works as we move through the process. But we're doing two repackages in this pipeline. Maybe it's a little more complicated than what you would typically need, but for demo purposes, it's quite nice to see. Finally, our last step is once we repackage and create a stable version, now we're able to go into production with that package. And again, we're doing that same sort of validation, making sure that this package is a stable version of the package. So now let's go and create a deployment set. I mentioned that we have two different package feeds configured inside of Hedgehog. In this time, we're going to go to the other package feed, which is dev packages. Now, this is meant to represent a package feed that is used primarily for developers. And you'll see in this feed here, we have packages with a CI pre-release version. This is something that we can presume a continuous integration server created. It creates them at random or whenever the developers dictates. To us, it really doesn't matter. All we know is that at some point there's a particular CI package that we want to deploy to our integration environment. So we follow the same process. Let's create a new deployment set here, and in this case use the deploy with repackaging pipeline. And in this case, we get a choice of packages that we can deploy. In this case, we can pick the latest one, 350, but instead I'm going to pick 345 because presumably that's the package a developer told me was a suitable package to deploy. So we'll take this package and then add this to our package set. So from here, we'll go to deployment set number 9. And here you'll notice the pipeline is a bit different, and the package that was imported is a different version, 1.6.0-345. Deploying to integration is basically going to be exactly the same. It's going to run through all of the same steps and have the same variables that we saw earlier. In this case, it's doing the same thing. It's creating targets and deploying it to the various roles that we're targeting, all happening so quickly that we can't see it. But here's the interesting step. So in this stage, it's going to repackage from a CI to an RC. Let me show you what happens in this plan. What the repackaging plan looks like is it sets up some variables here to say, I'm going to repackage this package name from this source feed to this feed, and the new version is basically going to strip out the RC. Basically take the existing package version and strip it out of this. What it's then going to do, if we're targeting RC packages, it's going to pull it from the dev packages feed instead and tag it with the RC and then the ID of the deployment set. When we run this, it'll be a lot more straightforward here. So let's go back to that deployment set and deploy this package to our testing environment. The repackaging step is very fast. In this case, it's basically just going to deploy. It's just going to unpackage and repackage this very quickly, and now it's kicking off a testing execution. You can see that the package associated with this package set has changed. It's now rc.9 instead of CI345. If we click on this and go to ProGet, what you can see here is this is the package that we just created moments ago from Hedgehog. And it has all of the same files with all of the same metadata as well. So this package was published to our deployment packages feed. Jumping back into Hedgehog, we can see that the testing deployment has now finished. We can now take this same package and do the same concept and redeploy it to production. Redeploying to production is very simple and straightforward. It's going to do the same thing. At first, it's just going to repackage this and basically drop that RC and convert it into a stable. And next, it's going to kick off an execution for production. What's nice about this production deployment here is that it's deploying it to two different servers at the same time in production. We can take a look and see what that's looking like, but you'll see two simultaneous deployments were kicked off to each of the two servers in that role. And like that too, it's also worth noting that our package has now finally changed to 1.6.0. This is no longer a release candidate package. It is in fact a final stable package, and when we go into ProGet onto that feed, we can see that if we look at this feed, version 1.6.0 is now the published version of that package. This allows us to have a good workflow without ever worrying about having packages tampered with, and allows us to have certainty that the packages we're creating have a nice traceable audit back to the source.